Hello everyone, welcome to Emily vs. Art, and today I'll be showing you how I go from a character thumbnail all the way to a finished painting. First, I draw a general sketchy figure, nothing too intense or posed. I want something neutral so that I can work several different outfit designs over it without worrying too much about different angles and how to compare over different poses. Here I want someone with an hourglass figure, so I lay down some light pink lines. I'm not sure why I use colors other than black, other than the black lines tend to get lost as I'm working with the underlying color or any sort of effects as I try to build out the line art. Here I've laid down some darker lines and made it a little bit cleaner and copied it 4 times. Then it's time to build some outfits for what I've decided is going to be a badass apocalyptic warrior girl. I think that she is going to be fighting some sort of monster. I don't have any particular ideas at the moment, but as you can see, I've added a shoulder pad and gauntlets, and she has a very utilitarian haircut, as well as some cargo pants, which I love because they have so many pockets. And it just seems like much more useful than a bodysuit in the desert or in some sort of urban apocalyptic environment. Then I decide, you know what, I guess I should do something a little bit more stereotypical video game babe. So I give her a sort of turtleneck shorts option. And it's really hard because you just want to get away from stereotypes. For example, I think in a desert environment, you would want to be as covered as possible, even though usually it's someone entirely naked. If you've ever seen people who actually live in the desert, they don't run around wearing tank tops and booty shorts. Even as I try to create a character that has more of a covered look, something that would be more useful in a very hot, dry environment where it's not very humid, I still found myself defining that hourglass figure and creating a stereotypically attractive female body. So I kind of gave up after that and decided, you know what, I've been watching people play Resident Evil 2 lately, so yeah, I think I can do something that's inspired by hot video game babes. I also start working on something a little bit more badass. Again, showing the skin, it's fine. I don't mind that she's gonna look a little bit sexy. In fact, it's clearly what I'm going for, and there's no shame in that. I decided to go with something a little spikier, and although I ended up not choosing it, it was really fun to design, and I think I might use it for future characters. Then I start working on the scene thumbnails, where I haven't even decided what outfit I'm going to use. All I know is I want to get the general idea of what I'm going to draw and how. So I go from a over-the-shoulder third-person perspective. I'm fully committed to the video game theme here now. And then something reminiscent of a superhero movie poster where the female character has ass to camera. Anyway, the next one is the one that I end up picking because I really like the pressed up against a wall, monster creeping, searching in a dark, dimly lit place. In the end, I also want to practice my perspective by drawing something from the bottom up. This seemed a little bit too difficult for my objective for this video, so I ended up going, as I said, with something a little bit more head-on, something that I could explore the world of stock photos to get something similar. And I ended up finding the perfect photo on SenshiStock, as you can see here. It is exactly what I wanted, even better than the sort of gun to the chest frightened look. I like this, it's powerful. I end up deciding on a mashup of the 2 thumbnails that I like the best, which were the first and second. At first I just block in the height, I draw in some general figure lines over the stock photo to get a sense of placement. Again, I'm not looking for perfect replication because this is going to be a more stylized piece, a little bit more cartoony, but I do want to have realistic proportions and nothing insanely bad in terms of the anatomy. So the stock photo is very helpful, and I am eternally grateful for the free resources that SenshiStock provides for us on DeviantArt. I begin sketching in the outfit, and as you can see, I am trying very hard to incorporate the armored shoulder plate, but in the end, it's just awkward, and I don't think I can make it work in a way that I would feel proud of. So I decide to scrap it and just go for a very simple turtleneck into cargo pants look. I also include the elbow pads because, again, I think that is so underutilized in an apocalyptic situation. You should be protected. Even if you are in a hot environment where it's humid and you don't want to have multiple layers, you are not going to be walking around with your arms bare in a zombie apocalypse. It's just too many bites. As you can maybe tell, zombie apocalypse is one of my other obsessions, and I will go into so many of those stories in another video. Here I just want to focus on the process and not get lost on the entire craziness of why zombie movies are probably terrible almost all the time. Anyway, after working in some more eyeballs, because more eyeballs are always good, and some sort of drippy frill, I've decided to block in some more environmental pieces. I want to do some sort of hand dragging down the window and shattered glass, which is going to be a really big challenge for me because glass is just not something that I have been able to successfully do realistically. Of course, I haven't tried all that much, so it was good to get this out of my system and just show that I was capable of it. Then I decide to work in some membranes on the monster and clean that up a little bit, change the color of the door. That's going to end up being a biohazard door, and I bring in a reference to help me because I don't know what that looks like. Then I go in and start doing line art and cleaning up the character figure in the foreground. I've really only called her Zombie Girl, so I don't have anything more descriptive than that. I decide to redraw my hand with a little bit different perspective because it just didn't seem to fit with the overall composition. I don't know if it actually is realistic now because I deleted the layer with my stock photo, so I hope it works. I also decide to add in some details with a dark saturated color as my line art. I don't usually use black unless the object itself is very black or is extremely contrasted, and the black lines would be a good artistic choice. I prefer to use these darker colors because it helps my line art flow into the painting a little bit more. After I finish up these sort of details and just, pleats and pockets and all the things that wonderful cargo pants have, I decide to move on to the face. I want something simple, and it actually ends up being an accidental mark that gives her the perfect dead-eye look. I really like that dead-eye look. It just is perfect for the protagonist of a zombie apocalypse film. Now I'm using the reference photo of a biohazard door, and I try to change up the signs a little bit and make them not exactly symmetrical or exactly identical, and, adding my own little things here and there. I think that the hinges were a good choice because it added a little bit more detail in the distance. But again, the little lines that I put there were never noticed probably in the final piece because they're so tiny. I also add some signs. They are going to say medical and hot lab. The hot lab sign ends up being blocked by her legs. A hot lab is where bacteria and dangerous viruses are worked with. This is where anthrax would be at a level 8 biosafety lab. And I always found that very interesting. I've read a ton of books, including the Hot Zone about, Ebola or Marburg virus coming into a monkey research facility. And it's really scary and really fun. So I wanted a little bit of realism here. As you can see, I'm also using textures in order to make the process a little bit simpler, so I don't have to hand draw every detail on the walls or floors. I use a brick texture for the floors and then some sort of window slat thing that I managed to morph from another tinier texture after adjusting some settings. And then I just use them with the transform tool, and voila, I have wonderful spaceshipy secret laboratory doors without much work. I've really been enjoying that process ever since I worked on my environmental thumbnails, which I used a lot in the cityscape one. Now I decide to work on some of the details of the hand and dripping blood. I want something that is stark and spooky, but I also want the window to actually look like glass, so I don't want this blank white wall. So I delete all the details, start working in on a new layer, the hand and the blood, and then underneath I decide to just make some 45-degree angle streaks with a kind of darkish blue color and soften it up with a little white on top, and it seemed to work at a distance, so I was happy with it. I'm really working on implying detail rather than drawing every single little thing, because it's just time consuming and I don't want to spend 15 hours on every single painting. I also decided to do the same on the window behind the character in the front, and this is where the challenge really lay, because I have never done, as I said, realistic glass. So trying to replicate broken glass was tough. I used the straight line tool to make some V-shaped lines, add some spidery broken bits, and then copied and pasted it after using the dodge tool to give it a sort of 3D look. The overlay and multiply layers also helped, and then I was too afraid to change it, so that was what I got. Then I added some blood, and I tried to make it look more splattery with the smeary sponge tool, but unfortunately it just kind of made it look awkwardly blurred. I'm going to have to work on my liquid studies, or how to draw shiny, liquidy, or even congealed bloody things. Then I use a loaded palette knife to build up detail and some, metal marks and scratches and wear and tear on the bio doors. I really love using the loaded palette tool to do this. It can give sharp, harsh lines, but also blend and smear, giving a little bit of color, but you can change that as you work on it. I also work on some of the details on the hair, the boots, other things that just make the character pop a little bit more. And then I start working in some of the more defined color areas on the monster. I replace the eyeballs that I had been working on before and try to get something a little bit more bulbous and membranous. I'm not sure I like the way that the final eyeballs look, but the loaded palette tool let me make these ropey, muscular shapes without, again, drawing every little detail. So I really enjoyed using that, and then the dodge tool because I was lazy and didn't want to actually work on my values by hand. Then I try to do some sort of ropey, filamenty hanging-ons on the outside of the monster, and I feel like this would have worked better if I had done it on the inside as well, added just a little bit more detail in just certain areas, maybe around the eyes. But I think it works. It almost looks like wiry grossness that has been sucked up into an organic mass. After I finish the monster, I save, I stop recording, and then I use the equalize tool to give it a little bit more of a dramatic pop. I really felt like the original version was nice, but it didn't give me the I'm in a scary, scary place feeling. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to my process. I very much enjoyed talking about it. Very soon, there will be more videos on how I go from a simple idea to a more complex one. This is a process that takes time, and I'm still figuring it out, so don't ever take my word as gospel. In the end, I hope you guys have a great one.